Welcome back to the Myles Hannak Show for July 25th, 2026. It's been 5 days since I last joined you, but that's for good reason. Had a few internship days, really been a slow news cycle. And then yesterday, the coveted LeBron James Day in my home state of Pennsylvania. So I've compiled over the news over the stretch, so we actually have a pretty substantial menu of topics on the bill for today. So just jump right into it where we always do at Beaver Stadium. Football actually saw a lot of development. Normally we talk a lot recruiting, maybe some, brief comments that pertain to the organization, and that's what we have a lot of today. Before we get into the marquee stuff that happened on the gridiron, it was announced that former defensive tackle Jordan Hill was announced as the director of the Letterman Club, a former Super Bowl champion with the Seahawks. So obviously this guy, his career playing days weren't too far behind him, so I'm really optimistic with this, getting a younger guy to kind of connect those younger generations as well of alumni. So obviously not much to say about it. It's more for the former players, and that ain't me. So the biggest one, also Penn State got some preseason accolades, the Shiners Bowl. 1,000 watch list, which is the 1,000 best players in college football. There was a whole heap of players named. I can name them all, but it's about like 20 or 30, so it's pretty much all you would expect. The only real surprise for me was that tight ends, it was Brahmer and Burkle, which I don't disagree, but I think it's kind of crazy that Anthony Rappleyea was not mentioned. I believe he could have a case for being better than Burkle. And it really isn't in a great situation in terms of playing time, but he is a top 1,000 player, I believe. But other than that, it's about what you'd expect. A lot of defensive guys per usual, so we'll see how the unit actually all meshes whenever the first game comes around. But time's moving fast, and we're almost there. And it seems like that. The anticipation's really at a high. Matt Campbell, new head coach, he did a one-on-one with Audrey Snyder, and Athletic Director Pat Kraft also had a round of interviews with Audrey Snyder and John Sauber. So there's a lot to unpack here. That's really the headline of what happened with football. The Campbell interview was on Audrey Snyder's Substack, so only a bit of it was available. But the marquee was that he expected now Penn State offensive line coach Taylor Mauser to inherit the job in Ames and be the Cyclones head coach, which, I mean, sure, his opinion doesn't matter much after he leaves, which is what a few people have said, but also at the same time, I think Penn State fans should look at this and say, well, if we're happy with who we have at coach and he thinks our O-line coach, which obviously we knew the bond there, is good enough to be a head man, then it should just make you even more optimistic for that unit. And I've expressed it, obviously, with Phil Trotwine gone to the Gators, like there is expected to be, at least I think, a drop, but this makes me feel a little bit more certain and sure. And I've talked about that dog mentality stuff, and obviously that's only on the surface. You got to actually get it on the field to perform, but just getting this sort of validation that this guy maybe is good enough to be even a head coach, just kind of, that stamp of approval from Campbell just really goes a long way for me personally. But other than that, maybe there'll be some more developments from that interview. That was really the only one that stood out. But the marquee one, the key one that we saw was the Kraft interview, where he talked about pretty much everything that pertained to Penn State this past year. He talked about the coaching search, landing Matt Campbell, the outlook for next year, the renovations to Beaver Stadium, the Nike to Adidas switch, and men's basketball. So there's a lot of good quotes there. With the coaching search stuff, it was a lot of the stuff that you'd assume that he said, that just feeling like the bond was right, and that, it's something that he believes is a perfect fit for both sides. But what really stood out to me was his comments on the coaching search. He said he would have liked to dug in more after being some misinformation given to him during his search, which I think is what we originally kind of heard about Campbell, is that he was given bad information, and that's why it took so long for him to actually get the Penn State job, because he was an initial target. So we'll know for sure maybe in the future if that's true. I don't know for certain, but that's just my guess at that quote per se. But he also said the search and process brought more venom that he expected. It affected his personal life, his family. he said he saw who was really in the boat with him versus people pushing their own agendas, which I guess you could say is true. There was certainly a lot of sections of the fan bases that would unite behind a certain candidate or behind a certain identity, and it would become very fractioned. But at the same time, I also think you saw how a figure like Terry Smith, through all of that, was able to garner support and really rally the fan base together for some. So I don't necessarily say personally, from my point of view, there was a ton of venom. I thought there was obviously a lot of differing ideas, but I think there was nothing really negative. Obviously, it's different for Kraft, who's in the middle of it, actually making the decision. From my perspective and his are going to be totally different. But I don't know. I feel like that's just a portion that was overlooked because I think, in the grand scheme of things, the search is going to pertain us slightly to that Terry Smith, saga and what he's done and why he didn't get involved in that. And I think there's going to be a little bit of bliss that comes with that saga. So I don't know. I mean, I think that was a little bit interesting to say, but I don't think anybody who's been around Penn State football can see how things can get. And definitely during that coaching search, it was for sure at an all-time high. So obviously with the season outlook, he's very optimistic with Rojas and Rocco. Just with a little bit of extra buzz with this switch. He had a lot of positive stuff about the renovations to Beaver Stadium, but he really did kind of say that it's only going to be, a fraction of what the full potential is, and we're going to have to wait even one more season to see it all. He noted being closer, to the action. He also said the USA game or USC game could be the moment that the upper bowl seating is fully felt. And I think that just kind of points to maybe what we're saying previously, that might be the whiteout, even though it's seriously not confirmed yet. He also brought in a lot of stuff like bringing in the concerts, the outdoor games. So I think there's a lot of optimism for the future of Beaver Stadium and just what it can be. We'll obviously have to wait for the potential to be tapped, but I'm excited to see maybe, some of the extra events that aren't Penn State related that could come there. And Kraft's quotes kind of just really doubled down that is something that is in the cards down the line. Carrying on, obviously, the biggest off-season switch has been Nike to Adidas, and he made a lot of comments on that. He said, obviously, with the detail that comes with the Penn State uniforms, it's very simplistic, so it's an easy switch for them. He thinks with the World Cup and all of the timing with the rollout that it was just perfectly executed, which I can't say that I totally disagree. I mean, obviously, when you're ending a few decade partnership with Nike, there's going to be some resistance, and I feel like they did pick a good time to do it. Um, he thinks that Adidas can make it more fashion forward and a global brand. So I don't disagree, but it is going to be hard to do that with the younger generation, which Nike certainly reaches better than Adidas. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what attire adjustments are made. I think there is an open book, which is what they want to do. They say that it's not really going to be, you know, something that affects on the field, which makes sense. But, he also said it's going to be something that's going to be retail marketing, NIL creativity. So it's going to be something that could be more, revenue generating and, just maybe new ideas and different avenues from what we've seen with Nike. So with that being said, I saw Ohio State Barstool posted that their jerseys next season for football look like they may have a sponsorship patch. I don't know if I'm reading between the line here, but with retail marketing, NIL creativity, and off the field stuff, it almost seems kind of like that could be a possibility. We saw Beaver Stadium, get that West Shore home label, which we thought was unprecedented. So I don't think this is a topic, while maybe it is taboo, is something that's completely unreasonable. I think we could see a patch. Obviously, it has to be something that's a good fit, and I think will obviously be disliked by the fan base, but it might be where we're going. And if Ohio State's doing it and all these other top programs start doing it, I feel like you almost have no choice because it's something to, get some extra revenue for that NIL creativity like they want. So it is something outside the box in this new era, and it will be something different for the program, but we'll see if that's something they make the move for. Definitely will be weird to see the Ohio State Buckeyes with a jersey sponsor. But carrying on, the biggest thing personally in this whole interview with Kraft was his finishing comments on the men's basketball budget. Obviously, we saw a lot of online dialogue with this, and we talked about it on my own podcast with Will Horseman and Chase Mitchell pod with us. There's a lot of good points here made by Kraft, just knowing that he wants to get them closer to an NCAA tournament, knowing that kind of like what Mike Rhodes said, that they're not going to be atop of the podium in terms of spending. And even if they would, it just wouldn't be a good investment. Getting an ROI, kind of, getting the revenue in if you actually spent 20 million, which was what the figure he points out. So he gave a lot of defensive Mike Rhodes, which I like to see because it shows that he's in that same portion that, the roster construction maybe wasn't there, and that this season he's gotten the better tools, which is something he kind of touched on. But yeah, there was a little bit of optimism. I'm sure we will discuss it on Pod with us in the future. So new episode just came out with that after the media this week with Mike Rhodes and players. So make sure you give that a listen. Me and Will sit down and give a good hour-long chat of a busy few weeks in the off season, and I'm sure we'll meet again for an episode 4. So please tune into that if you haven't already. But that pretty much does it with football. There really wasn't that much besides those comments. Very revealing stuff. I really encourage you to read the Center Daily Times article by John Sauber or listening to their whole live podcast that they did with Kraft. It was very good and very revealing. So awesome stuff by Audrey Snyder and John Sauber as always. But with basketball, I know we obviously talked about the NIL stuff, and that is going to be a major portion. But besides that, it's been a real quiet week. The only other um, big news point has been that almost the entire women's basketball coaching staff, Tanisha Wright, Octavia Blue, Danielle Edwards, and Kelly Mazzante, are all going to be on the hunt and on the trail for recruiting. There was 150 replies, 178 likes to this. They're going to be switching between a few showcases in Chicago, Ohio, and what was the last one? South Carolina, Kentucky. Those are all the boxes they're hitting. A few of them are going to be rotating between them on different days. So really busy few weeks or week ahead for the women's basketball staff. Obviously, they have a lot of roster construction to do, and there's still a lot for the future that needs done, but looks like they're hitting the pavement and getting that done early. Moving on, we talk about softball a lot. Also, on a similar vein, Coach Crowell is going to be on the trail as well. She's going to be at the Premier Softball Collegiate Showcase Camp in New Jersey. So, whenever we see her out, we typically see some big recruiting development. So, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. Softball is also searching for a new bullpen catcher. Interesting development. Maybe I'll put my hat in the ring. Get a few help out for the organization. I don't know if I could catch some of their fastballs, though. They have some great pitchers on their roster, but it was a pretty slow news day on the diamond regardless. That's all we had, nothing with baseball. But carrying on to women's soccer, we talked about their schedule release these past few days. It was now fully announced that their March to the Match tradition will be March 30th against Brown. So really looking forward to that. Hopefully there's some new, I don't know, events or spectacles or good turnout with everything that's going on with Jeffrey Field and just the anticipation. Women's soccer also added an assistant coach in Drew Williams. He was the Spokane Shadow GM and the coach of the year for that division. He was a former player at Whitworth, so really optimistic to see what he can bring. He's a younger guy, so I think there's, one to maybe suggest this is one for the future, but we'll see what his role really is. There's not much comment on that, so we'll just have to wait and see what sort of duties he really has in Don Block's staff, but definitely good to get it figured out, and he seems to be a rising star in the coaching world, so I believe that it could be a good addition regardless. That wasn't the only coaching staff addition, however. Swim and Dive actually added a new post, a head diving coach. It's something unique. I've covered that when I was a candidate at the Daily Collegian Swim and Dive, and it was the first season of Coach Holly Bonwit-Cron from, I believe it was Miami, Ohio. She did both the men's, women's squad, and the diving. So obviously it was a lot on her plate. She did pretty well. I was very optimistic of where the swimming diving program had performed, but it is obviously a lot to do. So I think they've added this position to kind of take some of that load off of her plate. And just from what I can remember of Bonwit Cron, she really wasn't a diving expert. Like her personal background, and what she did with Miami, Ohio was more in the pool, not off of the board. So I really think this is a move to be really competitive, and I think this women diving program has moved in a positive direction with her leadership, and just allowing her to focus on what she can do well is essential to that. So adding Samantha Pickens as a head diving coach is a really smart move, and just really helps the development of the student athletes to get someone who really has that expertise off the board. So really exciting move there, and I hope to see, a better year overall. I think they took a little bit of a hit compared to the season prior, but definitely getting the tools will be the first step in that. Carrying on to hockey, there was the 2026 World Junior Summer Showcase for men's hockey. Two Canadians, Jackson Smith, current defenseman, which was surprising to see him come back this year with the Nittany Lions. He probably could have, started his pro career with the Blue Jackets, but he'll be back. He'll also be invited to Canada. Joining him will be Nittany Lion commit and Florida Panthers prospect Shea Bush. So excited to see what those two go do with the Canadians, and maybe they can further their expertise and maybe, get some call-ups to some more substantial tournaments down the line. But other than that, that really tabs it. College Puck NXT put that Penn State men's hockey had the 11th best freshman class next season, which honestly I'm a little bit surprised with. They have a good amount of guys who were drafted last year, more guys who were drafted than, guys that were actually playing for them in substantial minutes. Obviously, you tend to see that more with hockey, with just how it goes. But I don't know. You saw a first round pick in Pierce or Jackson Cover. You saw Pearson Boy. So I don't know. I'm really excited to see what this freshman class does. Obviously, there's a lot of roster turnover and some big shoes to fill, but I think 11 just feels a little bit low for me personally. But we'll see. We'll see what actually happens whenever they step foot on the ice for the first time next season. But speaking about starting their seasons, track and field, Maddie Pitts, Johnny Dwyer, and Jake Palermo will be competing at the 2026 USA Track and Field Championships this week. I believe it concludes the 26th tomorrow, so it'll be their first competition wearing Adidas, and I could be wrong here. I don't believe any other sport has worn Adidas yet in competition, besides maybe some exhibitions, but I think this could be the first time we're actually seeing Adidas on a real live competition. So obviously big stuff there, and some big results expected from that trio. But other than that, there was a rather light news day when it comes to track and field. The only other development was that the Pittsburgh Panthers released their schedule on September 11th. Will be the Spiked Shoe Invitational at Penn State. This was an event they held last year. Penn State hasn't officially released their schedule for track and field. I mean, it was presumed this one was going to be on there, but now we had some confirmation that it will be, and we'll see the participating teams probably here in a few months, maybe a few weeks. But that wraps it up on the track. The only other developments that we have are rather light. We were pretty slow on recruiting stuff today, but wrestling looks like they're targeting Mario Hutchinson. He's going to be on Zach Seiko's podcast. He's a top 2028 prospect, state champion. So obviously seeing him with Seiko is going to be a key sign that this is someone that's trending in Penn State's direction, and it is a key target. Obviously he's 2028, so it'll be a few more years before we actually see him. But that's just a name to keep an eye on down the line for the Mats. Other than that, it was rather dry with, extracurricular topics. Penn State was up for a few USA Today Sports Reader Choice Awards. Best college sports tradition, best walkout tradition, best tailgating experience, and best college football stadium. If I were to guess, I'd say best college sports tradition and best college football stadium got to be the favorite two. The walkout, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit more, maybe Clemson, maybe, I don't know, jump around. Maybe there's a few that I feel like I could say are close, but I could see that being one that they put in a good finish for. And best tailgating experience is obviously one, that they're going to expect with the college atmosphere. But if I had to guess, it would be that best sports tradition for the whiteout and the best football stadium, especially with the renovation. That would be a nice one to take home. But the last thing that we had, there was a lot of talk about this one, if it was good or bad, but Penn State teamed up with Socius, who is a company who runs like a cryptocurrency thing for European sports where fans can kind of get these tokens to support their team and redeem it for merchandise and certain specific exclusive prizes. And this is exactly this type of structure that's coming to Penn State and a few other universities. The list is Michigan State, Texas A&M, LSU, and Maryland. So obviously, it's a big group of schools, some high caliber teams there. I'm not a fan of this particularly. I think it's a little bit like you're buying a token that really has no use. Like they literally emit outside of your institution. So I don't know. I think it only has hype if, like how all, cryptos do, if people buy into it. And I just don't think that there's a market enough to say that this is something that was one needed or two will be successful. I've written about fan tokens in a different way, having them, be something you earn through going to games, so that way you could jack up attendance and get some people to really get in the seats for stuff like soccer, lacrosse, track, swimming, these sports that don't really get good turnout all the time. So it's disappointing that an idea in title of a fan token is going in a different direction into something that's completely different because when I saw, oh, they're making fan tokens, I thought it would be like that. Um, but I don't know. We'll see how it turns out, and we'll see if that is an avenue. But way it looks right now, it looks like you just buy them, you just get them. So it just seems like it's kind of a market that is completely dependent on that hype and has no real validity, just a lot of volatility. So I don't know. I mean, that's brief. I'm not a finance guy. Maybe I need to call up some of my friends here who maybe have a better inclination, but I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's something that, shoot, by the end of the decade, 2030, you won't even hear the name Socius again on Penn State campus, but that's just my guess. We'll see. But that I think that wraps it up for our 25th. I'm gonna go enjoy the Yinzerpalooza Paul Skeens game with my Dr. Robbie bobblehead later today. But yeah, if there's anything else that happens for Friday, maybe we won't see it. We'll have to cover it on a later episode since this is a midday one. But I look to come back at you guys maybe on the 28th, 27th. If something more pressing happens, maybe I'll join you guys tomorrow. But that wraps it up for today. I'll join you guys whenever the news permits. So signing off for the Myles Hannak Show, I've been Myles Hannak.